Hi, welcome to Digging to China. I'm Dong Shang. Recently, there have been 2 terrorist attacks targeting foreigners in China. On June 10, in Jilin province in northeastern China, 4 American teachers working in China were stabbed. The next day, the Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs confirmed the attack, describing it as an isolated incident. On June 24th in Suzhou, a Japanese mother and her child were attacked by a Chinese man while waiting for a Japanese school bus. After stabbing the mother and the child, the attacker tried to board the bus to continue his assault, but was stopped by a brave Chinese female staff member on the bus, who risked her life to intervene. She was seriously injured in the struggle and later died. Thankfully, bystanders helped subdue the attacker, preventing more serious consequences. The next day at a press conference, Ministry of Foreign Affairs spokesperson Mao Ning stated that the police had preliminarily identified it as an isolated incident and emphasized that China remains one of the safest countries in the world. In fact, such incidents have repeatedly occurred in China. Beyond blind patriotism, there is another possibility. The perpetrators are often people at the bottom of society who have endured significant unfair treatment. They might have been blocked from petitioning or denied unemployment benefits. In their desperation, they may think, if the Communist Party won't let me survive, I will cause trouble for them. By killing a few foreigners, I can create a diplomatic crisis. They understand that the foreigners in China are the true privileged class. If something happens to them, it becomes a major issue for the Communist Party. In a way, the party is digging its own grave by not providing the lower class with a means to survive and oppressing them excessively, even refusing to give them a few hundred yuan in unemployment benefits. They drive people to cause damage that is thousands of times greater than those few hundred yuan. Yet, the entrenched Communist Party is unlikely to learn from these lessons, as they are once again targeting the livelihoods of rural farmers today. Recently, in places like Fengyang in Anhui province, Nantong in Jiangsu province, and Ezhou in Hubei province, local governments have introduced policies to incentivize farmers to surrender their rural residential land. Farmers who give up their land can receive government subsidies to purchase homes in urban areas. For example, Fengyang offers a subsidy of 50,000 yuan towards urban housing purchases. This initiative reduces the cost of a 1 million yuan house to 950,000 yuan with the subsidy, akin to a 5 yuan voucher for a Rolls-Royce. Do the farmers only miss out on that 50,000 yuan subsidy when buying houses? Despite their efforts to stimulate the housing market, they can't sell houses. Eventually, they target the farmers, aiming to seize their rural ancestral homes and compel them to buy city houses, becoming the real estate market's last resort. Aren't they afraid of provoking the farmers into rebellion? Even if there is no rebellion or societal retaliation, if they incite anti-foreign riots and uprisings, the money the Communist Party earns from farmers buying houses may not cover the costs of maintaining stability. Farmers in China have access to rural residential land, a unique form of collective ownership. Only farmers can buy and build homes on this land, which typically cannot be sold or used as loan collateral. Many generations of farmers have lived in these ancestral rural homes, which now serve as the last resort for those migrant workers returning from urban areas. For many farmers, losing their rural residential land would mean losing their only home. In China, there have been tragic incidents over the past few decades related to rural land policies. These often occur when sudden government policies require farmers to give up their land without timely or adequate compensation. This has led to mass protests and harsh treatment of farmers, with some even losing their lives during these protests. In China, there is a banned book called China's Peasant Investigative Report, which records similar events. Today, the Chinese government is employing every possible measure to revive the real estate market, including reducing down payments, lowering interest rates, relaxing housing provident fund loan criteria, removing purchase restrictions, and promoting housing subsidies. Despite these efforts, real estate transactions continue to decline, and even official statistics from the National Bureau of Statistics paint a pessimistic picture. This year, the monthly national sales area and the sales volume of newly constructed commercial housing have seen nearly a 30% decline. According to the latest fiscal report from the Ministry of Finance covering January to May, revenue from the sale of state-owned land use rights has dropped by 14%, totaling just 1.28 trillion yuan. These numbers are a direct challenge to the Communist Party's effort, showing that despite the numerous real estate market stimulus policies, they have proven ineffective. It's not that people have ample funds and choose not to buy homes, rather, many simply lack the financial means. Thus, offering housing purchase incentives without addressing income levels is futile. As a poor person who cannot afford a Ferrari, would a 5-yuan coupon suddenly make it possible? Therefore, the Communist Party is now resorting to desperate measures. Since urban residents aren't responding to any stimulus to buy houses, they are considering turning to farmers as the last option. If farmers lose their rural residential land, they will have no choice but to buy houses in the city. Thus, the first step is to find a way to persuade them to relinquish their rural land. Several years ago, local governments began coaxing farmers into moving to cities and purchasing homes, initially employing indirect strategies such as closing village schools and requiring children to attend urban schools. This approach pressured farmers to buy houses and settle in cities. However, these tactics primarily affected families with children. To encourage a larger-scale migration of farmers to cities, the most direct method involves depriving them of their rural homes. Without a home, they would be compelled to establish new residence, prompting policies like subsidies for farmers to relinquish rural residential land and purchase urban homes. However, after these policies are implemented at various levels, it's challenging to prevent them from causing some tragedies. As widely known, China's rural areas are relatively closed off, and the village cadres, such as the village party secretary and the village head, often hold significant authority akin to local lords. In cases where quotas are forcefully imposed on village cadres, such as demanding a specific percentage of rural residential land to be vacated, these officials may enlist gangs to enforce compliance, resulting to intimidation or violence against farmers. This approach risks increasing the number of tragic stories involved Chinese farmers once again. In recent years, we continue to see occasional reports of farmers in certain villages resulting to violent retaliation against oppressive village cadres, even resulting in tragic incidents like the killing of cadres and their families. This underscores that the status of Chinese farmers have remained unchanged since the founding of the Communist Party. They are consistently marginalized and treated as the lowest tier of society. In reality, if the Communist Party and the various levels of government were to genuinely understand the public sentiment, they would realize that many farmers simply lack the financial means to purchase homes in cities. According to Chinese government statistics, as of 2023, rural migrant workers earned an average monthly income of only 4,780 yuan, and the rural residents had an average annual disposable income of just 20,000 yuan. After covering basic living expenses, there is little left for savings. Even if we consider that houses in smaller county levels are relatively affordable at 1 million yuan each, with a 700,000 yuan mortgage at a 3.5% interest rate, the monthly mortgage payment would exceed 3,000 yuan. It's unrealistic to expect many farmers to bear such a significant monthly financial burden, especially since they also need substantial savings for a down payment. Additionally, farmers lack comprehensive medical insurance and typically receive minimal pensions, often just over 100 yuan per month, which they must rely on for healthcare and retirement. Given these financial constraints, it's clear that most farmers simply don't have the extra funds needed to buy a house. If the goal is to truly enable farmers to afford urban housing, I believe at least these 2 points must be achieved. Firstly, farmers should be allowed to voluntarily relinquish their rural residential land, but it should be sold at market prices. Offering a 50,000 yuan subsidy for buying a house is like giving alms. It's insignificant when it comes to purchasing property. Secondly, offer rural residential land in exchange for improved retirement and healthcare benefits. For instance, increase farmers' monthly pension to 2,000 yuan and raise medical insurance reimbursements to match urban standards. Some urban villages in coastal cities have successfully implemented similar programs. I've heard of farmers in Jiangsu and the Zhejiang provinces who have greatly benefited from urban redevelopment. They moved into city resettlement areas after their rural homes were demolished, leasing or selling their original land for commercial developments like shopping malls or markets. These changes have allowed them to receive annual dividends per person, significantly improving their living standards. At least in these cases, farmers are fairly compensated. Therefore, I believe the first step in rural areas should be to utilize land resources effectively to benefit the local residents, ensuring that farmers become financially secure. Once they have sufficient funds, buying homes will naturally follow. Farmers in coastal areas who have become wealthy are fortunate, but many rural regions in China remain underdeveloped and challenging. Historically, farmers have always been the most exploited and oppressed group in China. From being required to provide grain to support urban populations to being starved during the Great Famine while being prohibited from leaving their homes. These instances illustrate that whenever China faces difficulties, farmers are the first group to be sacrificed. Now that the real estate market is failing to recover, the Communist Party is looking to squeeze one last round of value from farmers. Some might argue that the party has set up a real estate fund to buy unsold properties, so why isn't it working? Reports from domestic sources indicate that the local governments have just issued announcements seeking public feedback and are only purchasing entire unsold buildings or entire residential complexes unsold. This shows that the policy is still in its early stage and it requires financial backing from the government. The exact amount of funding each area can secure from the central government is uncertain. It appears some regions are running out of patience and are trying every possible solution, which is why they are now targeting rural residential land. From the current series of policies the Communist Party has enacted to revive the real estate market, two things become clear. Firstly, the party leadership is staunchly opposed to raising people's income and providing welfare, as they do not believe welfare is necessary for China, a stance repeatedly emphasized by Xi Jinping himself. Secondly, they suffer from a severe path dependency, insisting that the financial stimulus should be directed towards investment rather than boosting consumer spending. They seem to think that investing money in research and development can drive technological advancement, while directing funds towards consumer spending does little to benefit technological progress. Due to the Communist Party leadership's entrenched mindset, they have been unable to break free from their path dependency. Consequently, they continue to emphasize the supply side while neglecting the demand side. If no one within the party steps up to change this governance approach, it can be said that we are indeed entering the declining phase of this regime. Thank you for watching. Please like, leave a comment, and subscribe to my channel. Just click the subscribe button right here. I'll see you again shortly. Until then, be well.